Vietnam's first known civilization began in the Red River Valley around 5,000 years ago. But in 207 BCE, a Chinese military leader named Trieu Da took over the region and formed a kingdom called Nam Viet. This kingdom blended Chinese rule with local Viet traditions and stretched from southern China down to what's now central Vietnam. But that's just the beginning. So in this video, we'll dive into the key stories behind Vietnam's rapid transformation, exploring its rich history, fascinating geography, strategic geopolitics, booming economy, and vibrant culture. After Trieu Da took over, the Han Dynasty of China conquered Nam Viet in 111 BCE, kicking off nearly 1,000 years of Chinese rule. The Vietnamese resisted throughout, and finally, in 939 AD, a leader named Ngo Quyen defeated the Chinese and declared independence. From there, things started to take shape. By the 11th century, Vietnam unified under the Le Dynasty, which set up a centralized government in what's now Hanoi. They reformed agriculture and administration, laying the foundation for an independent Vietnamese state called Dai Viet. But as Dai Viet expanded, so did the challenges. In the 12th and 13th centuries, it clashed with powerful neighbors like the Champa Kingdom and the Khmer Empire. As a result, the Lai dynasty weakened internally and was replaced by the Tran dynasty in 1225. The Tran dynasty kept the country moving forward, even as it faced major threats, like 3 massive invasions by the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty. But under the leadership of General Tran Hung Dao, Vietnam pushed them back, marking one of the most legendary military victories in the nation's history. Despite this, internal struggles remained. By 1400, the Tran dynasty fell, and the Ming dynasty of China invaded again. But they didn't stay long. By 1418, a wealthy landowner named Le Loi led a massive uprising. After a decade of fighting, he kicked out the Chinese, declared himself emperor, and founded the later Le Dynasty. Under Le Loi and his successors, Vietnam flourished. They created legal reforms, promoted education and the arts, improved farming, and tackled land inequality. But as the population grew, farmland in the north became scarce. So Vietnam expanded south. In 1471, under Emperor Le Thanh Tong, they conquered most of the Champa Kingdom. That's when Vietnamese settlers moved in, building villages all the way down to Nha Trang. And over the next couple of centuries, they kept pushing, this time into Cambodian territory. By the early 1700s, the Mekong Delta and Saigon, now Ho Chi Minh City, were under Vietnamese control. Then, by 1757, with just one province left unconquered, Vietnam's borders looked almost like they do today. But growth brought division, and that made Vietnam vulnerable. So in 1857, France made its move. Under the reign of Napoleon III, France decided to invade Vietnam, aiming to open up new markets in Asia. The following year, Admiral Rigaud de Genouilly arrived in what we now call Da Nang with 14 ships and 2,500 troops. They took the port easily, but faced heavy resistance inland. So in 1859, Genouilly changed course and captured Saigon. After years of fighting, Vietnam signed a peace treaty in 1862, ceding southern territory to France. That territory became the colony of Cochinchina. A few years later, France took more land in the south, but they didn't stop there. In 1863, Cambodia came under French rule along with Vietnam's southern regions. Then by 1883, the imperial court gave up control of central and northern Vietnam, which France renamed An Nam and Tonkin. In 1887, France grouped these territories into a single colonial superstate called French Indochina, and in 1893, Laos was added. Once in control, France overhauled Vietnam's systems. Under Governor-General Paul Doumer, who took office in 1897, the French imposed a Western-style administration. The Vietnamese emperor became a figurehead, but as you would imagine, the French officials ran the show. Doumer's focus: exploiting Vietnam's resources. He invested in railroads, roads, ports and bridges, not for the locals, but to extract and export rice, coal, rubber and minerals. French businesses thrived, but the Vietnamese not so much. By 1930, only about 100,000 Vietnamese held industrial jobs in the few factories that existed, mostly in Saigon, Hanoi and Haiphong, and their main job was to produce basic goods like paper, sugar and textiles. But 1930 marked a turning point. On that same year, a revolutionary named Nguyen Ai Quoc, who we now know as Ho Chi Minh, began rising as a powerful anti-colonial voice. However, that didn't last long, because soon after came World War II. In 1940, Japan invaded Vietnam, pushing the French aside and taking control. But when Japan was defeated in 1945, Ho Chi Minh and his communist-led Viet Minh declared Vietnam's independence. France, however, wasn't done. They tried to retake control, sparking the First Indochina War with the Viet Minh. After nearly a decade of fighting, the war ended in 1954 with a peace agreement, and the country was split into two: Communist North Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh, and the non-communist South Vietnam, backed by the West. Which brings us to Vietnam's unique geography. Stretching across a variety of landscapes, Vietnam is home to rugged mountains, lush deltas, and a long, stunning coastline. It sits right in the heart of Southeast Asia, covering about 331,700 square kilometers, or roughly 128,000 square miles. Vietnam shares borders with China to the north, Laos and Cambodia to the west, and it faces the East Sea and the Pacific Ocean to the east and southeast. On land, the country has around 4,550 kilometers, or 2,827 miles of borders. But its real standout is its coastline, which spans approximately 3,260 kilometers, or 2,026 miles, from Mong Cai in the north down to Ha Tien in the southwest. Fun fact: Vietnam is often nicknamed the S-shaped country because of how it curves on the map. The land slopes from the northwest down to the southeast, following the flow of major rivers. Around 3/4 of the country is made up of hills and low mountains, with 85% of the land sitting below 1,000 meters or 3,281 feet in elevation, and only about 1% rises above 2,000 meters or 6,562 feet. The tallest mountain ranges curve from the northwest to the southeast. In the far north, you'll find the famous Fancy Pan, known as the Roof of Indochina, standing at 3,143 meters or 10,312 feet, making it the highest peak in mainland Southeast Asia. As you move east toward the coast, the landscape flattens out into narrow strips of lowlands. South of Hai Van Pass, limestone peaks give way to granite hills, eventually transitioning into the Central Highlands, a high plateau tucked behind the Truong Son Range. And while mountains dominate the landscape, the deltas are Vietnam's lifelines. They make up only about 1/4 of the land, but they're vital for farming, fishing, and daily life. In the north, The Red River Delta spans roughly 16,700 square kilometers or 6,450 square miles, while the Mekong Delta in the south is massive, about 40,000 square kilometers or 15,444 square miles. Between them are smaller deltas that line Vietnam's central coast. Speaking of the coast, Vietnam's shoreline is dotted with thousands of islands and islets. In the Gulf of Tonkin, you'll find about 3,000 of them, including Ha Long Bay, Bai Tu Long Bay, Cat Ba, and Bac Long Vai Island. Further out lie the Paracel and Spratly Islands, and to the west and southwest, you've got beautiful island groups like Con Son, Phu Quoc, and Tho Chu. Then there's the south-central coast, a region of striking contrasts. It covers 8 provinces, from Da Nang all the way down to Binh Thuan. Bordered by mountains on one side and the sea on the other, this area is known for its dramatic scenery. Sandy beaches with a rocky highland backdrop. In terms of the weather, the climate here is typically hot and humid, with temperatures ranging from 22 to 32 degrees Celsius or 72 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The rainy season runs from September to December, and the dry season stretches from January to August, making it a great place to visit year-round. This region is also packed with top destinations. There's Mai Khe Beach in Da Nang, once named by Forbes as one of the most attractive beaches on Earth. Hoi An Ancient Town and My Son Sanctuary are both UNESCO World Heritage Sites that offer a peek into Vietnam's rich cultural past. Then there's Nha Trang's Hon Mun Island. It's a hotspot for coral reefs and snorkeling, while the ancient Ponagar Cham Towers, dating back as far as the 8th century, add even more historic depth to the coastline. While the region is rich in natural beauty and culture, its location also plays a much bigger role, shaping Vietnam's geopolitical importance and economic rise. So let's zoom out and see how its place on the map has influenced its power and position in Southeast Asia. Vietnam is a socialist state led by the Communist Party. The president, elected by the National Assembly, serves as head of state and commander of the armed forces. The Prime Minister, also appointed by the Assembly, oversees the government. This structure heavily influences Vietnam's economic direction and global partnerships, which, according to Edmund de Rothschild's deputy CEO, Vietnam has been one of the fastest-growing economies in Southeast Asia over the past 5 years. And the numbers back it up. Vietnam continues to see solid gains in education, healthcare, and GDP per capita. Its development model mirrors what China followed in the early 2000s, betting big on manufacturing, scaling up exports, and staying globally competitive. Today, manufacturing remains the backbone of the economy, especially in electronics and energy. But tourism and construction are quickly gaining ground. Vietnam's exports are just as diverse, ranging from crude oil, seafood and rice, to shoes, wood products, machinery, electronics, coffee, and clothing. Back in the day, from 1975 to the late 80s, Vietnam mostly traded with other communist countries. But after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1990, everything changed. Vietnam opened up to the global market, kicking off a new era of growth. Looking ahead, the World Bank predicts that by 2035, half the population will be considered middle class. That shift is expected to fuel a surge of entrepreneurs and new wealth. With millionaire numbers skyrocketing over the past decade, Vietnam's momentum shows no signs of slowing, making it a prime destination for long-term investment. Beyond its rapid development, Vietnam stands out for its deep, vibrant culture, one of the oldest in the world, shaped by nearly 4,000 years of history. While centuries of Chinese rule left a mark, Vietnam forged its own identity, growing alongside Chinese civilization, not beneath it. Take ancestor worship, for example. It's a cornerstone of the Viet's daily life. Most homes have an altar honoring past generations, and major decisions, whether it's marriage or business, are often made with the ancestors in mind. Additionally, family and community sit at the heart of Vietnamese life. It's common for 3 or 4 generations to live under one roof, and many villages are still named after long-established clans. And when families get together to celebrate milestones and major events like weddings and funerals, they make it a point to have elaborate, tradition-filled affairs, with dates often selected by a feng shui master. Culturally, Vietnam is incredibly rich and diverse. The country's 54 ethnic groups each bring their own traditional clothing, customs, and languages. The iconic non la or conical hat is widely recognized, but each group has its own unique colors and styles. If you visit Vietnam today, you'll see that many still wear this traditional clothing daily, especially in rural areas. Besides clothing, art and storytelling are at the heart of Vietnamese identity. From water puppetry and calligraphy to silk paintings and folk tales, creativity runs deep across every form, and what ties it all together is a strong reverence for nature. Dragons, turtles, lotuses, and bamboo aren't just decorative, they're powerful symbols you'll see everywhere, from temples to everyday art, each with its own story and meaning. And when it comes to music and dance, every region has its own unique characteristics. Northern court music is elegant and refined, while the South tends to be more festive and energetic. But dance isn't the only way the Vietnamese express themselves. Their martial arts are another expression of this cultural depth. With roots in ancient battlefield techniques, styles like Nhat Nam emphasize fluid movements, while Southern garden styles are known for their strength. Even the diaspora contributed with Vo Vi Nam, a modern martial art that blends self-defense with national pride. Of course, we can't talk about Vietnam without touching on its cuisine. While the food is incredibly diverse, it's often grouped into 3 regional styles: Northern, Central, and Southern. Across all regions, noodles, noodle soups, and a variety of spring rolls are staples. The cooking style emphasizes fresh ingredients with minimal oil and a heavy use of herbs like mint and basil. Soy sauce and fish sauce are also key flavor components. One of the most iconic dishes is noodle soup, known locally as pho, which originated in northern Vietnam. It features rice noodles in a fragrant broth, usually with beef, chicken, or seafood, and is often served with scallions, bean sprouts, and fresh herbs. There are also delicious vegetarian versions of pho, making it a dish that truly caters to all tastes. And trust me, this is just the beginning of everything Vietnamese culture has to offer you. When you explore Vietnam, you're not just visiting a country, you're stepping into a living, breathing cultural mosaic shaped by thousands of years of history, hardship, and heart. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love the next one.